Have you ever looked at your life and felt like something's missing, even though you have so much? Well, today we're going to dive into where this feeling of lack comes from and what we can do about it. I'm your host, Daniel James, and as always, if you're new here, welcome. So let's dive into the 3 insights about lack, and more importantly, what we can do about it. So the first insight is that the root of lack is comparison, not absence. Now, the feeling of lack, which is an important thing here, and we're going to dive into this as we go along, but lack is a feeling. It is a feeling, not a fact. So the feeling of lack often comes not from what we don't have, but from what we think we should have. So we think we should have more. It's not the way we're missing something, but it's like that constant feeling of wanting more, more, more. This persistent feeling of lack often stems from something called inferiority complex, where we basically all begin in life essentially as inferior. As a baby, you are inferior. No matter how great you think you are now, as a child, you're small, you're completely dependent, and you're surrounded by capable adults. So you are inferior. So it's a natural process as we start out to be inferior. Now, healthy individuals, as we grow older, we use this feeling of inferiority to motivate us for growth. We realize, okay, at the minute, I'm at the mercy of everyone else. I'm going to use this to grow so that I can start to become self-sufficient and self-reliant. However, others can get trapped in this perpetual state of not being good enough. Because we're born not good enough, even though we are perfectly perfect, because we're feeling inferior, we get confused and think that we're not good enough and that people are constantly better than us. And that's not the case. It's a story that we tell ourselves. And again, we're going to dive into this later on about where this story comes from. So what often happens is we compare ourselves to others because we believe that we're falling short. And this whole thing about lack actually comes about from what we don't have and about how we're positioning ourselves in relation to others. So we're constantly comparing ourselves. And the analogy that I use with this is that we go through life and we think that we're on a ladder. We think everyone's on the same ladder and we're looking up and we're thinking we're behind. We're comparing ourselves to everybody else externally and we're chasing. When actually, the better analogy is that we are on a field. We're on a field and we're all in our own lane. And other people have started in front of you, other people have started behind you, but every single person is running their own race. So it's realizing that we're not actually lacking. The issue is it's our perceived lack because we're judging our worth on external standards. We're judging our standards based on things that are not reality. Because on this ladder analogy, we think that people are above us. And that's not the case. We don't know what the situation is. But actually, if we can take a step back and just see ourselves on the same level playing field and we're just focusing on running our own race, it's a completely different shift. Because then what we're doing is we're comparing ourselves to ourselves and our journey and our lane, rather than looking at other people, because we know that other people have other starting positions, but every single person is running their own race. And oftentimes with this feeling of lack, again, it's this story that we've created ourselves. And what we're doing is we're just making things seem a hell of a lot worse than they are. So a useful prompt that we can do here is asking ourselves, if I stop comparing, what would I still believe that I'm missing? If I stopped comparing, what would I still believe that I'm missing? Because oftentimes the answer is not what we expect. Because when we stop comparing, we realize actually we have everything that we need. And talk about comparison, people say comparison is a thief of joy. I don't agree. And I believe that there is a place for healthy comparison. But the comparison should be, am I improving from the version of me that I used to be? And am I moving towards the version of me that I want to be? And you can look at people, they're in the lane next to you and be like, oh, okay, that's a great idea. They're doing really well there. Be comparing yourself from a place of not inferiority, but from a place of curiosity, to then help you on your journey. Whereas actually from the ladder analogy, you're constantly comparing yourself and say, I'm behind, I'm not good enough. They're so far ahead of me. It's just that nice little perspective shift, and it can make such a massive impact. Now, the second insight about lack and the feeling of lack is that gratitude is to the illusion of lack. Like when you focus on what you have, What you have grows. When you focus on what you're missing, the void expands. Now, the story that you may have heard me speak about before when it comes to this is Adam and Eve. Now, again, you may not be Christian. That's absolutely fine. I've said before, I'm not Christian. I believe in spirituality. I've read a lot of the religious books, and I believe that all these religious books have stories that basically tell us how to live our life and life lessons in story format. And Adam and Eve is a great example. So in the story of Adam and Eve have everything. They're in the Garden of Eden, and they have absolutely everything they could possibly need. And then a snake comes along one day, a serpent comes along one day, and focuses their attention on the one thing they can't have, and that is to eat from the forbidden tree. There's a tree, fruit, not allowed to eat it. They've got all this other fruit they can eat, all this other fruit, anything they could possibly think of, but because their attention is focused on what they don't have, they have to walk through all the things they can have to get to the place where they can eat that apple, and then they lose everything. Now, the moment that they focused on that one thing they couldn't have, the abundance turned into perceived scarcity. So they kind of create this lack mentality. Even though they had was abundance, just by focusing, just shifting their focus, they turned the abundance into scarcity. Because where your attention goes, your energy flows. What's your attention on? Now, this whole thing illustrates a fundamental psychological principle about what you focus on expands in your experience. And this comes from something in your brain called the reticular activating system. We spoke about this before. So the reticular activating system is essentially a filter. And this filter helps your brain deal with all the information that you're bombarded with on a daily basis. So when you're saying to your brain, for example, show me the things that I'm missing in my life, the brain will focus in and it will show you more of the things that you're lacking. Rather than if you just shifted that perspective and said, do you know what? Show me all the things in my life and all the things I've got to be grateful for. Once again, it'd focus in and you'd see more of it. So when we lack gratitude for what we have, our attention naturally gravitates towards what's missing. And this is a cognitive bias that's created called focusing illusion, which is basically where we overestimate the importance of what we don't have whilst underestimating the value of what we do have. And I remember doing this as a child at Christmas time. A friend or my siblings would get something, and because I didn't have that, I perceived that the thing they had so much more value. Because I wanted it, the thing that I had, it seemed like it was valued less and wasn't as important. So, for example, I'd be there playing on my PlayStation, and then if my brother got another console, I would then think that mine was worse for whatever reason. Even though I'm having a great time playing it, but because this is a new shiny thing, my focus is shifted, and I now think less of my thing, and I'm now focusing more on that thing over there. And I overestimate the importance of that. I kept thinking, well, if I had that, then I'd be happy. That's what's missing. But it's not the case. So the lesson here is that lack begins when we obsess over what's missing rather than appreciating what's present. Let me say that again. Lack begins when we obsess over what's missing rather than appreciating what's present. So we're obsessed about the apple. We're obsessed about our sibling or our friend's thing that we can't have, whether it's a holiday, a car, whatever it is. And we play that comparison game in a negative way. External things rather than looking on an internal comparison. Now, social media and the consumer culture acts as a modern day serpent. So the serpent was saying to Adam and Eve, like, oh, go on, have this apple, have this apple. Ignore all the amazing stuff you've got. You want this apple. The social media and consumer culture acts as that modern day thing. And it's constantly whispering to us, like, you need more. You need more to be enough. You need more money. You need a better job title. You need the latest car. You need the latest clothes. Whatever the trend is, you need it. You need it. You need it. Because when you have that, that's when you're going to be enough. And it simply isn't the case. So one tip to get our focus shifted back on to what we do have is to practice gratitude. And I've spoken about this a lot over the years doing this, the Primal Project. But just having a 5-minute daily gratitude practice can make all the difference. Because what you're doing is you're training your brain to focus on the things that you are grateful for. And a lot of the times, you'll say, yeah, I get with clients, but Daniel, I am grateful for my family. I'm grateful for all these things. I say, well, when was the last time you told yourself? When was the last time you actually showed some appreciation for those things? Because you can be grateful, but then forget to show that you're grateful. Or you can forget to pay the attention. So for me, even if you don't want to sit down and do a gratitude journal, maybe when you're driving back from work, you just spend a few minutes and think, okay, what am I grateful for today? What experiences? What lessons have I learned? What am I grateful for? Because that's so powerful. And when you're doing this gratitude, you want to include things that money can't buy. So be gratitude for potential inner peace. Be grateful for growth. Be grateful for connection. Things that money can't buy. And you don't just want to say the thing, you want to feel it, because gratitude is a feeling. And the reason why people say the gratitude journey doesn't work is because they just go through the motions. So if you really want to retrain your brain to focus on the positive and all that abundance is in your garden, rather than that one apple you can't have, start to practice gratitude. It should be a daily practice, just like putting on deodorant. You don't just do it once and you're done. Like if you don't keep applying that deodorant, you're going to smell. Same with gratitude. If you don't keep applying gratitude, if you don't keep focusing on the good things, especially in today's culture, as we said with the social media and the consumer culture, it's very easy to have that smell of comparison creeping in. So make sure it's a daily practice. And the final insight is that lack is a story and we can rewrite it. The feeling of lack is not a fact. It's a story that your mind is telling you based on past pain or adopted beliefs. As I said, lack is a feeling. Your feeling comes from thoughts. The thoughts that we have normally come from these past experiences that we have or beliefs that we hold about ourselves, about our self-image, or about the identity that we hold. Now, there's a psychologist called Alfred Adler. If you haven't heard of him, I strongly recommend you go and check some of his stuff out. He's brilliant. He coined a concept called fictional finalism. And this is the idea that people are unconsciously driven by imagined life goals or ideals. And these aren't based on logic or fact, but on internal beliefs like, I must be perfect to be loved, or once I earn more, then I'll be respected, or if I don't achieve this by this age, then I'm a failure. How many times have you done that yourself? Said at least one of those things. I know that I certainly have. I was very guilty of this. When I have this, then I'll be happy. And just constantly pushing that happiness into the future, not allowing yourself to be enough in the moment. These fictions create emotional pressure and feelings of lack because they move your fulfillment out of the present moment and into the hypothetical future. Once again, this hypothetical future. And you never feel enough because the goalpost keeps moving. Because you get that one thing, okay, now I need this, then I need that. It's constantly changing. It's constantly changing. You're constantly looking for ways to improve. Most people carry around this subconscious script that sounds like, I don't have enough because I'm not enough. Others are further ahead than me. I must be behind. I'm missing something critical, and that's why I feel stuck. It's that thing that I'm missing. If I only get that thing, then I'll get unstuck. When you examine these beliefs, we often find they're not based on your own truth. They've been absorbed from your parents, who maybe linked love to achievement, from the school system that ranked you against your peers and basically said if you weren't at the top, then you weren't good enough, and constantly comparing you. And especially if you were in the middle ground, even if you were at the top of the middle, again, still average, still not the best. And also absorbed from a culture of ideas that glorify status and image over wholeness and that sense of wholeness within yourself. But all of this it's not truth. It's not your truth. It's someone else's story that you're living in your mind. And especially if we keep having the same stuff repeated over and over and over again, the same thoughts, and we never stop to question them, these thoughts then become our beliefs, and then our beliefs become our reality. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So how do we identify this lack belief that we have? Now, I would finish this next sentence as honestly as you possibly can. I feel a lack in my life because, and allow yourself to fill that in. And it could be because I haven't achieved my goals yet. I feel lack in my life because I'm still single. I feel lack in my life because I don't feel important. What is it? Where is this feeling of lack for you coming from? And then let's find out where this has come from. And asking, okay, this feeling of lack and this thing that you're single because you haven't achieved your goals, whose voice is it? Whose voice is it that you're listening to? Because it's not going to be yours, because you wouldn't have chosen this script. So where has the script come from? Who has planted that seed in your mind? And start to get really inquisitive. Where did I first hear this? It sounds like my history teacher, or it sounds like my parent or my grandparent, or it sounds like an ex-partner. Where did it come from? Whose voice is it? And when did you first start to believe it? Because often, we've mentioned, it's a parent, it's a coach, it's a teacher. It's something that you've repeated over and over and over again and not stopped to question it. But once we identify it, we can start to process it and separate ourselves from that story, because that belief and you, they are not the same. They're two different things. But you've taken on this belief and this story as your own, and it's causing havoc. So now we've got this belief, we've identified where it's come from, whose voice it is. We can then ask ourselves, is this belief absolutely true? What does this belief cost me emotionally? And this is the most important one. What's a more empowering version of this story that I can tell myself? This feeling of lack does not have to be your story. Start to identify where it's come from and start to change the narrative. If you know someone that struggles with the feeling of lack that you think could take value from what we've covered today, please share the show. Help us get this information out there to help as many people as possible. And if you yourself has enjoyed this, think about subscribing on the link below and giving us a thumbs up. Until next time, take it easy.